Hello, and welcome to the Minnesota Homeownership Center's Welcome Home podcast. My name is Bill Gray, and today we're going to discuss the two main alternative homeownership models that are out there, namely community land trusts and housing equity co-ops. Joining me are experts on these arrangements, respectively. AsaleSol Young is Executive Director of Urban Homeworks here in the Twin Cities. Urban Homeworks does many things, including within the co-op home ownership space. AsaleSol, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Also joining us is Osborne Strickland. Osborne is a broker with City of Lakes Community Realty, which is a subsidiary of City of Lakes Community Land Trust. He also happens to be a former homeownership advisor. Osborne, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. Okay, so let's get started. AsaleSol, let's start with you. First off, tell me more about your organization, Urban Homeworks. You do a lot more than just co-op home ownership, right?
Absolutely. And actually, co-ops are fairly new for the organization. So we've been around for nearly 30 years, 27 to be exact. And when we started, we were just a volunteer effort, rehabbing homes and then turning them around for dignified rentals. Today, we have 134 units of dignified rentals in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we also sell homes for affordable ownership, typically for the 80% area median income buyer.
Okay.
We've sold over 100 homes, again, across the Twin Cities. The center of our work is community development. So we're really thinking about how to rebuild and reclaim neighborhoods. The brick and mortar aspect is only a piece of it. It's also about the leadership development of the folks that live in those communities and making sure that the politicians, the electeds, are listening to the folks on the ground, that the folks on the ground are really understanding all the rhetoric and conversation that the elected officials are having. So that's another big component of our work, is that we believe in connecting, again, the politics that are happening around housing with the folks that are most impacted by that housing.
Because it doesn't always happen.
Exactly.
Hardly ever happens.
Hardly ever happens. So,
well, that is cool. Urban Homeworks is a great organization, and I know that the Homeownership Center, we actually collaborate with you regularly on a number of things, and
that's right.
Appreciate that very much. So, as I mentioned at the outset, we're looking at the two main ownership alternatives to traditional homeownership, where the owner purchases the entirety of the home and the land under and around the home. Let's start with the land trust model. Osborne, tell us a little bit about City of Lakes Community Land Trust and how the land trust model works when it comes to purchasing a land trust home.
Okay. All right. To start out with, I think it's probably helpful to kind of understand the philosophy behind the land trust model. Okay. And what community land trust organizations do is they seek to develop affordable housing, perpetually affordable housing within the communities that they serve. And in doing so, they use what's called a land trust model. And that's just what you indicated. It's where a home buyer purchases a home. All right. And they own the home. They own all the improvements on the home, garage, outhouses, pole barns, whatever. And they lease the land a community land trust organization holds that land in trust for future generations, so that when the house is sold, it is sold to someone who meets the requirements of the land trust, and in association with the land trust, they move forward with respect to home ownership. And when they go to sell, it's sold to someone who meets the requirements of the land trust. And so that's how the land trust keeps housing affordable within a community.
Mm-hmm. So you purchased this home. What about improvement?
So operationally,
yeah.
Okay. Let's talk now a little bit about how it works operationally.
Okay.
So when a buyer purchases a land trust home, they own the improvements and lease the land. Okay. They have the ability to use the the home the way a traditional buyer would. They also have the ability to use the land the way a traditional buyer would. But there are some regulations. Let's talk about capital improvements, for example.
Right.
Land trust owners or owners of land trust properties have the ability to make capital improvements the same as anybody.
So they could do a kitchen remodel.
They can do a kitchen remodel. They can put a fence on their yard. They can build an addition within reason.
Mm-hmm.
They can, build a garage. Those kinds of things. But what the land trust wants to know with respect to those capital improvements is, they want to know what they involve and what they entail.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they want to know that is they want to be able to keep track, financially of those improvements, so that when they go to resell, the homeowner can retain 100% of the market value of their capital
Credit for having
improvements.
done that. Yeah.
There are some resale restrictions. I think the one that people are most concerned about is the equity split. Okay, because a owner of a community land trust property does not get 100% of the equity. The City of Lakes Community Land Trust, for example, if they buy a home and sell it, they get to retain 25% of the equity. 75% stays with the home to make it affordable for the next buyer. There are other land trusts that may have a different equity split. Homes Within Reach, for example, I think they have a 35 equity split. Okay, so it's important to keep track of capital improvements and things like that.
Right. So it's a really interesting model. The questions that I have when I think about it are, who specifically might it be for? Why would you do this? Why would you do a land trust instead of a straight up purchase? I'm making an assumption that it's probably an income and a qualifying and that kind of an issue, and that it lets people maybe a little bit lower on the ladder financially be able to achieve home ownership or get started and be on that path. Is that correct, or is that not correct?
Well, yeah, there are all kinds of reasons why somebody would buy a community land trust property. Okay. In fact, there are so many reasons I don't know where to start.
Okay.
But let's start here. Okay. Oftentimes, community land trust properties are priced a lot lower than the market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To give you an example, I have a client now who when they go to a mortgage lender to get pre-approved, their purchasing power is really somewhere around 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really buy a house worth living in for $100,000.
Right.
Okay. So the land trust has programs or had programs where they can supplement that purchasing power. Okay. The City of Lakes Community Land Trust, I'll talk about their program. They have a program called the HIP program. That's called the Home Buyer Initiative Program, whereby a person can get up to $100,000 to combine with their purchasing power. Now they can go out in the open market and they can buy a home priced around $200,000. So without the land trust, they couldn't afford really to buy a home that, a nice home. With the aid of the land trust, they have the ability to do that. Okay. And so that's one of the advantages. People who might not be able to afford a home, in conjunction with the programs offered by a particular land trust, it puts them in a position now to be able to buy a home.
Right.
Okay. So that's who would buy. Now there are other people. Let's talk about people's circumstances and some of the people that I see buying homes. I see artists buying homes. I see people who are disabled buying homes, people who are on a fixed income buying homes. people who are just really not interested in the for-profit or the traditional
right.
home. They may not have the desire for, well, let's put it this way. Equity may not be their prime objective.
Okay.
Their objective may be providing, a stable place to live for their family. And that's not to say that you don't get equity from land trust properties. You do. But a lot of people who buy land trust properties are more interested in providing stability
and that stable payment.
And that stable payment, yes, the same kind of thing. You're right, that you would get in a traditional purchase.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are some of the reasons why people. And so it ranges. I mean, we're talking about people within a certain income level.
Right.
Okay. So we're not talking about anybody who just wants to buy an inexpensive house.
Right.
We're talking about people who
there's a trade-off.
Who are in a certain income, but for the availability of land trust, some of these people probably would not be able to purchase a home.
Right. Okay. So what I'm taking away from this conversation is land trust can help you to achieve home ownership when maybe you would not have been able to do it otherwise. Equity is an issue. You don't have the straight up equity of a traditional purchase, but you still do have some of that equity.
You still do. But let me say let me say something about the equity, because it tends to be that tends to be one of the sticking points that people have.
And it's what we say, home ownership builds wealth.
Right.
So let's have that conversation.
So one might say, well, not land trust property. No, that's not true. They do build wealth. When one buys a land trust property, it is often not sold at the market price. Okay. So particularly a home that's developed and let me back up. Particularly a home that is owned by the land trust, either new construction or rehabbed or whatever. It's owned by the land trust and it's put out there for sale. That home is not sold at market value.
It's sold below.
It's sold way below market value. Okay, so it's not really right for somebody to make 100% equity.
Right.
On a property that they didn't pay market value for.
Right.
That they only paid, say, a portion. So let's take a $275,000 home. Okay. The land trust might sell that home for $150,000. Okay. So the individual, if they stay in the home long enough, the market is right, and those kinds of things, they're gonna earn some equity. But they're not going to be able to make equity off of the market value of the property.
And that's fair because they didn't pay the market value of the property.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
That's a really good explanation. Thank you for that. So, very cool. Okay. So, in preparing for this conversation, I also noted that according to Grounded Solutions Network, there are more than 225 land trusts in the United States today. So here in Minnesota, and you can add more if I miss some, but I saw City of Lakes, I saw One Roof Community Housing in Duluth, I saw Central Minnesota Housing Partnership in St. Cloud, Greater Metro Housing Corp. And Rondo Community Land Trust here in the Twin Cities. Did you mention another one when we were talking?
Homes Within Reach.
Homes Within Reach.
Right.
Okay. So
let me say something about. So you've got community land trust organizations. Okay, and it is true. It's correct that they will purchase homes, rehab homes, put them up for sale. They will build new constructions. They have a whole host of homes that they sell. But there are other organizations, particularly nonprofit developers, who build homes, who rehab homes, and put them on the market, and they're sold They're sold using the land trust market model. Urban Homeworks, for example, does the same thing. Habitat for Humanity does the same thing. PRG, some of these nonprofit developers will put homes on the market and they're sold not
Yeah.
like a traditional sale, but they're sold as a community land trust property.
So that's the whole perpetually affordable thing. Is that what
Once a property
Uh-huh.
is in a community land trust,
Uh-huh.
okay, the idea is to keep it perpetually affordable through holding the land in trust.
Yeah.
Okay. And usually because these homes have money put into them, in other words, to get them up to
Mm-hmm.
market uh, uh,
Like
attractiveness, so
standards.
to
Yep.
speak. You know what I'm saying? There's
Mhm.
money in those homes. So together with that money that is put into that home, that is retained in the home on future sales,
Mhm.
together with the retention of the property in trust, those homes stay perpetually
Mhm.
affordable.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when they're resold, they can only be sold to somebody who meets the requirements. So that's where
Right.
that's where the special buyer comes
Yeah.
into play.
And those requirements are usually financial income.
They're usually financial, but they also require some other criteria to go along with that. I'll mention two or three.
Okay.
One is not all lenders, underwrite land trust properties. So
Mhm.
land trust organizations usually have a cadre of specific lenders that work with buyers of those properties.
Mhm.
Frequently, a land trust will require an orientation before a offer is accepted. And the reason for
Right.
that is land trusts want buyers to understand what a land trust is
Yeah.
so that they can analyze the impact, on
Right.
their own financial situation or their own situation.
Right.
Okay. I think another requirement may be before before a property is closed on.
Uh-huh.
Some land trust organizations require a buyer to meet with an attorney to understand, the ground lease that is associated
Right.
with, the land.
Mhm.
Okay, so that there's an effort made by most, if not all, community land trust organizations to help an individual understand exactly what they're getting into.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's so interesting. All right. Land trusts. I understand them a lot better now. One more thing I wrote down here. Do I understand correctly that homeowners can sell, that a homeowner, a straight up normal homeowner who owns their home in the traditional manner, can sell their property to the land trust and have that turn into a land trust home?
Okay, so I think what you're talking about here is the City of Lakes Community Land Trust. I'm not
Mhm.
sure about all the other ones,
Yes.
because I
You
really
guys
kind of
specifically.
deal with that. They have a program that's called their a Sustained Legacy Program,
Mm-hmm.
and there are two aspects of this program. One is where a uh, low to moderate income individual, okay, who has a low mortgage or no mortgage, if they are having problems staying within their home for some
Oh,
reason,
uh-huh.
or if their home is in,
Mm-hmm.
really bad shape, okay, they have the ability to sell their home to the land trust or the community land trust, and the community land trust will restructure any mortgage, if they have a mortgage, and reset the financials, so to speak, okay, and help that individual stay in the home. In exchange,
That's
the
really interesting.
the homeowner will deed the property
Right.
over to the land, rather, over to the community land trust. And by doing so, that home becomes a community land trust property
Right.
and stays in the program in perpetuity and is added to the inventories, so to speak,
Right.
of permanently affordable housing.
Right.
Okay.
That's really interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I had read it more like, if you wanted to sell your house to the land trust, it would be a good thing to do
Okay.
kind
Now
of
that's
thing.
that's a second part of the sustained
Okay.
legacy program. And it's similar to, if you think about, all these commercials that
Right.
talk about donate your car to,
Right.
it's similar.
Yep.
So we have some people who want to leave a legacy.
Yep.
Okay. And so they may not need the money,
Uh-huh.
or the house may not, be in terrific shape or something
Right.
like that. So they have the ability to donate the house to the land trust. Okay. And it becomes, through that donation, it becomes a community land trust property. The community land trust then will either rehab it, upgrade it, put it on the market,
Uh-huh.
and sell it. Another aspect of that, of somebody donating their property, it doesn't have to be a donation. An individual, if they wanted to, sell their property at a discounted price, it has to
Right.
be enough
Right.
of a discounted price to make the math work. Because usually when that happens, something needs to be done to the house. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
It needs to be rehabbed. It needs to be, safety issues need to be taken care of, those
Mhm.
kinds of things. So if the math works out, so to speak, yes, a seller has the ability to sell their house at a discounted price to the land trust. It then becomes part of the land trust's inventory of perpetually affordable housing. So that's the Sustained Legacy Program
Okay.
of the City of Lakes Community Land Trust.
All right. That's such a cool model. I've heard a lot about land trusts over the years that I've been at the center. I've heard much less about co-ops, and so let's talk a little bit about co-ops now. AsaleSol, as we said at the beginning, Urban Homeworks doesn't do just co-ops; they do all sorts of things. But you are working on a co-op project. Let me just see here. Why don't we start with just a kind of a primer on how the model works?
Yeah. So I think that, co-ops have been around for a long time. They are something that homeowners tend to know less about, renters tend to know less about, but it's a very similar structure to a condo, which is something that we all kind of accept as a possible homeownership structure. What is similar is that you own as an individual a piece of a larger entity. The difference between a condo and a cooperative is that in a condo, you own a unit, and in a co-op, you own a share.
Okay.
Right. So it's a fraction of the entire
thing.
The entire thing. Exactly. And, there are different cooperative models, but ultimately co-ops tend to be about a community. So a lot of co-ops will, there's artist co-ops. There's cooperatives for elders. In Chicago, where I'm from, there's an array of co-ops for middle income as well as lower income folks. The idea is that you want the share of responsibility similar to a condo structure, but you are looking for that deeper community connection. And so, the co-op shares in the mortgage payment. You as a shareholder have a small portion of the mortgage, but the co-op entity and your other shareholders also pay into the larger mortgage. Your taxes are reduced because, again, it's that same sort of model where you pay a piece of it, but the co-op pays the whole thing. And so, I think we talk a lot about co-ops for lower income families, but we have seen, them for middle income families. Again, that's like a popular model that I'm aware of in Chicago. As I think, your messages to me have noted that they've also gone to wealthier folks. Again, it's all about what folks are looking for. But why Urban Homeworks cares about co-ops is it's very similar to the land trust model in the sense that we're looking to as like an entry point for lower income buyers, folks that aren't necessarily coming with a larger down payment capacity. In a share loan for co-ops, for example, you might have to put in, say, $1,000 for your down payment. And again, that works because everybody's putting in, and then the co-op entity itself. So the bank still gets what it needs. But you have an opportunity to be an owner with a very low initial payment.
Okay.
And then over time, again, similar to a condo, and I'm comparing it to a condo just because I think people are very familiar
Yeah,
with condos,
and I've
right?
never heard that comparison, but it makes sense.
Hopefully
Yep.
it's helpful,
Yeah, yes,
and
it
not
is.
just extraneous.
Yeah.
But essentially, you know, like similar to a co-op where you put into your HOA
Uh-huh.
and the co-op makes sure that the land or the condo makes sure that the land is taken care of if there's any repairs that are needed. So a co-op is very similar to
Right.
that. You have a sort of cooperative board structure. So each, let's just say that we're all in a co-op together.
Uh-huh.
Each of us have a vote in the major repairs for the property. If you want to make changes in your unit, you would like bring it to the community to talk about and discuss. So it's similar to a condo, but there's just much more emphasis on the community that's being built, and then what's being sort of left behind, similar in a land trust model. So co-ops tend to have those income requirements, and again, it depends on who initiated the co-op and their purpose.
Yep.
For us, we're looking for lower income buyers. We're looking specifically for folks that want to stay in their communities, are probably multi-generational renters, right? And are looking to do something, to enter into the ownership market, to do something different. And so I like to really talk about the financing piece, because I think similar to land trust, people get caught up on, well, how much wealth do I get to build in this opportunity? And so if the ask is that you come in with a grand, right, that's like significantly smaller than the ask for a single family home.
Right.
And again, every part of your costs are shared with the collective. Now, if you choose to sell your shares, similar to the land trust model, you'll get a percentage of that sale, which tends to be significantly more than what you put in that $1,000 mortgage. It could be, $5,000.
Yeah.
So I like to think about it as single family ownership really allows you to build equity, which can build wealth over time. Cooperative ownership, and I even think of land trust this way, is about really building like the savings that a family has access to. So if I sell, okay, now I came in with $1,000 and now I'm leaving with $5,000 to $10,000. Like that is significant for me and my family. And I can decide, okay, do I want to buy into another cooperative with a similar opportunity to grow our savings? Or do I want to look at now single family homeownership opportunities, which will allow me to take that savings and maximize it and turn it to a greater wealth building opportunity?
Super interesting. Yeah, this is the one that I have not gotten my head around very much so far at all, and that is really helpful. So, most of the time, and I don't know if this is right or not. Most of the time, what you're going to be living in is kind of like an apartment. I mean,
or like a condo. It's a unit.
So when I think of a condo, I think, okay, it's got upstairs and a downstairs and a bedroom over here, this and that. Same kind of thing?
It can be.
It can be.
Right. So the cooperative project that Urban Homeworks is working on currently with the...
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
Yeah. So the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism organization. Those are 4-bedroom units that are stacked. So there's 3 floors and they're side by side. So think like a townhouse structure on a single plot of land. And that's how, again, given the reality of the Minneapolis market and zoning, that's what we've chosen to do.
Right.
But in Chicago, you see co-ops that look all kinds of ways. You see the side by side. You also see the kind of traditional apartment building. So it really just depends on, I think, the access to land, the zoning requirements, and things like that.
Right.
And the intention that goes into the cooperative. So, for example, Lena Gardner, this is really her dream, the Blue Cooperative Project. And she wanted to make sure that there was equity in the design of the co-op. And so, when you do units that are stacked, like, you've got your garden level and then your 3rd floor, everybody wants to be on that 3rd floor, got that beautiful view of the city skyline. But then the ask in a co-op is that you're putting in the same amount. So that's obviously not fair.
Yeah.
So this way, when they're stacked in this manner, it's the same. Everybody's putting in, everybody's getting the same product. And so it just makes that initial community building a lot easier.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. And this is an actual project being built right now, or
We
already
break
done?
ground
Breaking
this
ground.
spring.
All right.
Yes, very exciting. And there are 8 plots of land
Uh-huh.
that the Blue organization has purchased.
Uh-huh.
So we start the development of on the first plot.
Uh-huh.
So it'll yield 24 cooperative units by the end of the project.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That is great. We need to get some publicity about that in the newspaper.
Yes.
Because that is a big deal.
Yes,
That is
it is.
cool.
It's very exciting. All the units are in North Minneapolis.
Okay.
Or I should say all the plots in that near north area. And we are focused on single mothers,
Yep.
Black and Indigenous,
Yep.
to really, again, I always talk about responding to the data. Just
Right.
address like who's missing, the kinds of supports that folks need. So
Yep.
these homes are intended for families and for
Mhm.
families to really come together and build community together.
I think that's amazing. Well, thank you for that.
You can't help but think about co-ops and condos. Would you say, because I'm listening to what you're saying,
Yeah.
would you say that a critical distinction between a co-op and a condominium is that when I think of condominiums, I think of individual households
Yes.
in a building.
Yes.
But the way you're explaining this co-op, it's almost like that's not the case. These are people who are together.
Yes, it's
You know what
intentional.
I'm saying?
It's an intentional community.
Yeah, it's a community. Yeah,
living
it's
together.
a close-knit
Yes.
community
Yes.
versus individual households that may have nothing to do with each other except
Yes.
reside in the same physical
Yes,
building.
Exactly. So what I appreciate, again, I see this as a similarity with land trust, is that it's not just thinking about that individual family.
Mhm.
It's thinking about the impact on the rest of the community.
Mhm.
Right. And so in this project, the City of Lakes Community Land Trust is a partner. And so you have that sort of increased community impact where the
Yeah.
land will remain affordable. And of course, then the co-op has its parameters around area median income
Yep.
buyers. So there's all these layers while also ensuring that what families put in, they'll get more when they exit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there is the ability to buy more than one share.
No.
Oh, you can't. Okay,
You
all right,
cannot.
I misunderstood that. Okay, so
I'm
everybody gets the
the same
allotment of shares,
Yes.
and one family can't say, "Hey, I got 10 shares, so you
Right.
can't use my
Exactly.
you can't use my
Exactly.
driveway or
Exactly.
something."
Because
Yeah.
then now we're getting out of the equity piece, right?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like your family can afford to buy multiple shares. So now you have
Right.
2 votes.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah, trying to solve a problem without creating a new one.
Right. Well, so these are 2 very cool models that that are helping people who have even more challenges than most at the point that they're at in their lives at that time. As far as trying to achieve homeownership goes, it's a rung up on the ladder. Because
Mhm.
that's so thank you for that. I understand both these models a lot more now. Let's see. I wrote down here. Across the country, according to Cooperative Housing International, there are about 6,400 housing cooperatives in the U.S. today. If anybody's interested, there's a partial list of housing equity co-ops in Minnesota available on the locally based Shared Capital Co-op's website, and that's at sharedcapital.coop. Shared Capital is a funder of business co-ops of all types all across the country. So yeah, when I looked at this, I kind of went down a rabbit hole. We got co-op grocery stores, co-op
Yes.
everything, and co-op housing. So but thank you. This has been a really great conversation. So I think that's it for this episode. If you are interested in exploring homeownership for your own household, including these alternative models that can greatly reduce the traditional financial barriers to entry, You can take a home buying class and enlist the help of a home ownership advisor for free by going to our website, hocmn.org. Our advisors and educators are embedded in organizations across the state, and they'll work with you to help you get mortgage ready, educate you on the buying process from A to Z, and walk with you through every step of the process. I want to thank our guests today, Osborne Strickland and AsaleSol Young. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. In closing, I want to acknowledge our sponsors, Associated Bank, Midwest One Bank, and Old National Bank. Our sincere thanks to each of these organizations for their support. Thanks and have a great spring.
Thank you.
Thank you.